Our special guest today is, and I'm not kidding when I say this, a marketing wizard. For 9 years, she has been working with Attila Glatz Concert Productions and Salute to Vienna. She has been in charge of the marketing staff and promotional campaigns for concerts in more than 30 cities across North America. This lady, she has expertise in website design, video editing, graphic design, social media marketing, traditional media strategy, budgeting. I'm not kidding. She is a marketing wizard. She also has a background in music, and she has served as the chair of the Ontario region of the Canadian Music Centre. My guest, of course, is the wonderful Andrea Warren, and I'm going to send an invite her way and get her in here. Hello, Andrea.
Hey, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining.
I blushed a little with that introduction. That was awfully kind.
I thought you would, and that's why I was kind of giggling a little bit through that. I'm so excited for this conversation. What a star, says Yash Tam there. Yeah, that's absolutely true. The one and only, yes. Keep them coming, folks. Keep them coming.
Yeah, no, we can stop with that now. You're going to make me very blushy. Well, I am going to return the favor to say that Nick is just an absolute powerhouse. So there's going to be some competition for the compliments here because.
Well, full disclosure, we work together. You are my boss. And I say that because, it will be just conversation. It will be.
Is that why you were complimenting me?
Compliments going back and forth. Yeah. But no, I'm so excited for this conversation. We talked about this before just because I think you and I share a lot of the same philosophies and values around marketing. And so I'm really excited to dive into that. And I was realizing as I was planning this that I have enough questions that could fill a half hour, which I don't want to do. I want to leave space for a nice back and forth with you. No. But so that's where I say, please just interject and interrupt me as we go, because otherwise, I've got so much to actually ask you about.
Well, that sounds great. And Nick already knows that I'm a bit of a loudmouth, so you know, it's good that you came prepared so that
that's
I don't talk your ear off.
Maybe I should be the one interjecting with questions. Right from the beginning, I do find your start with Attila Glatz Productions fascinating because correct me if I'm wrong, but unlike myself, you did not start with like a job application. Is that true?
It's true. This is a good story. It was a very different universe back then, 9 years ago. I met Marion and Attila Glatz in the basement at that time. We were not the basement, in the main lobby of our Bay and Bloor office in downtown Toronto, and I think it was a Saturday, so the office was completely dark. Now Marion and Attila are beautiful people, and I mean that inside and out, but I immediately felt underdressed as soon as I arrived because as you know, Nick, they have this very European sensibility about them, both of them. So I arrive and feel underdressed. That's not a good way you want to start an interview. But I went upstairs and I think they offered me a drink in the office and we sat down and we chatted, and it was the most unconventional job interview I had ever had. So it was really...
Do you remember like how long it lasted? Was it? Yeah. I imagine with the two of them, it just evolved into more of a conversation than an interview.
It did, which was pretty great. That is absolutely what it ended up being. And we talked about music, and of course, Attila has a background in music, and so do I. So we chatted about that for a good long time, and there were no interview questions prepared. Nick, you just came through my interview process fairly recently. You know, it was pretty rigorous. There was quite a lot. So
absolutely, yeah. That's
I got off easy.
You and I started, in very different ways, I think. Was it like timing wise? Are we on the same page that way? Like, did you start in the thick of a busy season, or?
I did, yeah. Same.
So, if you don't mind me saying, you did not have like traditional marketing background though coming into this. So, what do you think sold them on you in that conversation? And then obviously we're going to get into the learning curve, but let's talk about like that first little bit as well.
So my actual connection to this company was actually through our music librarian, Gary Corin. I had gone to a performance in Toronto. And just in my idle time, I mean, it's a little bit of a obnoxious thing to do, but I I marked up the program book. I sat there and I found more than 100 errors and inconsistencies in the program book where I was sitting, and then I went home and marked them all up with tabs because I don't know. But now I think what a shameful thing to do. But anyway, I had told Gary, who was an acquaintance at the time, that I had done this. He had told me that they were looking for someone. I've forgotten your question. How did I get on this?
No, I guess
the marketing background.
You're kind of on it because number one, my question was like, how do you think you sold them? I guess in that interview with very little traditional experience. Yeah,
for sure, it was that. It was that was my foot in the door. At the time, we were producing these really extensive programs for Salute to Vienna. These commemorative programs, 60 pages. And I was coming from a magazine. I was working at a magazine before then. So there was a connection to editing and music publishing that was a sort of natural fit. But Nick, you know what? I'm going to answer this question by flinging this back to you, because I think you and I are similar in this way.
Yeah.
I think our marketing experience, we both come from a real love of the arts. And we come from both being avid audience members and also avid performers. So we know the importance of how to match a good audience with a performance, because that makes such a critical difference. So I think that's what at the crux of it, what makes us good at what we do and what makes us able to match make people with the right concerts.
It's interesting, and I was actually going to ask about your magazine background and if you think it helped you. So it's interesting that you actually brought it up there, because it makes sense. But yeah, I think both you and I, it's that thing of transferable skills. Neither one went to school for it, but the instincts are there. So it's like, and I'm sure you're seeing this with me, the learning curve that I'm on, even the stuff that I don't understand or know about, I hope I'm making up for it in the natural instinct of, well, this makes sense to do, so let's do this, and that just comes from, I think, our background of, as you said, doing, whether it's shows in a performance capacity or event management or any kind of thing like that, right? Yeah,
you're totally right. And as we've talked about before, really none of what we do is rocket science. This is not that complicated. We have, and I don't mean that to degrade people who go to school for many years, I'm sure they bring many, many experiences that we don't.
Yes.
For sure. Let me be clear. There are many, many programs that one can go to for arts management, but arts management is full of people like us, sort of on some kind of spectrum between failed performers or performers where the shoe just didn't quite fit. You know, it just wasn't right. People who would rather be on the other side of the curtain. And I think that's it for me. I think you're still an active performer, but for me anyway, I would much rather be on this side. It's a thoughtful way to approach music making. It's thinking about how do I find the very best audience to make this performance experience electric. It's really a dialogic process, right? Like being in an audience and having that interaction with the performers. I think it makes a difference to the music making. So
100%. And like, let's actually sit with this for a bit, because one of my questions was, which is great because you're just moving through them seamlessly as though you, which you didn't. I did not send them ahead of time. But I wanted to talk about how you think your background, because you've been in a couple of choirs, a number of choirs, as well as vocal teaching, ear training teaching. So you have that music background. And I wanted to just talk about how you think it's helped you with marketing. But I think you kind of started touching on that. And it's an interesting philosophy where our desire to perform, because I'm finding the same thing right now, is that this is fulfilling a need, this job. So even though it's on the other side of the curtain, it still feels like you're putting on a show and a part of a very important part of the process of putting on that show. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I absolutely feel the same way, for sure. The job of a performer is it's sort of, I see it as twofold. It's to take a piece of art and interpret it and make it your own, and while still bringing to it the intentions of the performer. That's the way I've always sort of seen that. We could talk about that for an entire day, I'm sure. But we facilitate that. We bring together, and because we're such a small company here at Attila Glatz Concerts, I really like that, because we all have a hand. Even today, you and I, Nick, were talking about future performances and should we bring this artist or this artist, right? We're involved in that process. So we're really thinking about how do we fill a need in any given time, in any given city, to fit the right performance in, and then how do we find the people that will show up and love it? So yeah, is that sort of how you feel? What are the differences?
So. Well, I mean, obviously, I think I'm hitting I'm fulfilling that need in things like this. There's a performance aspect in terms of like being a front-facing part of the marketing, but I find the other part, I think, is these two things were always tied together for me in high school when I was putting on shows, or when because I had made films and I was kind of running these premieres. All the marketing was done by me, and I was figuring out how to get the audience in to see my work.
For sure.
So I think that same, it's almost subconsciously just pulling the same passion, if that makes sense. Pulling
Absolutely.
from the passion barrel.
Yeah, and doing it yourself for your own performances gives you a window into how to do things on a shoestring budget as well, and do things efficiently, and lean on partnerships as well, which is something that we do all the time in the arts now. You know, I can't imagine coming from marketing cell phones or something and then landing myself in a job in the arts. I think it would be really disorienting. It is an entirely different process. It's very collaborative, as you know. We're talking all the time with organizations in each of our cities of how we can help each other. I love that. It's such that's the beautiful part about it feels like community music making in a way, even though we're not the ones actually producing sound ourselves, you know?
Yeah, and do you, like with kind of your background, like have you had any experience kind of prior to Attila Glatz, like doing that sort of like grassroots marketing promo for the various things you were involved in?
For sure, yeah. I did. I was on the board of the Amadeus Choir.
Yes.
It was a great group, yeah. And I served a marketing function there to really try to figure out it's a tiny organization, a nonprofit organization. How can we bring people in without spending much money? That's the key, right? Because you want to be able to, and in our case, I'll return to our case, it's always the same. You know, we really want to be able to spend our money on bringing the best artists in front of a new audience. So you don't want to be losing that sort of access to new audiences without a good return on your investment there. So lots of volunteerism and similar.
It's funny because it's as you said, I think there's two things. You learn how to do it on a shoestring budget, but the other thing is when you're marketing on your own for these various projects, you face that failure of seeing it fail a lot, right?
Yeah,
but
it's true.
It also just prepares you, and it I think prepares you to see ahead with different things, if that makes sense. So you're kind of like, let's not do that because that might lead to that. Or
it's true. It's true. And being, you know what? I think you've hit it on the head there, Nick. I think when you're in the position of being a performer and you're promoting your own work and the job you do isn't good enough to get a good audience in, and you performing and it feels flat. There's no electricity in the room. And that experience of seeing what could have been had you been more successful, I think that makes you work really hard to make sure that doesn't happen for others when you're in our position now.
That's actually a huge part of it. And I remember we were having a conversation recently about an artist, a potential performance, and they were talking about like how much would need to sell to break even, and how much would need to sell to look good from which is another important thing though, right?
It is
Two don't necessarily equal.
No, and it's so fascinating too how deceiving that is. I had no idea until I started in this business how you can be in a concert hall and it can feel pretty full, but oftentimes there's 2, 3 balconies above you that may be closed, may be completely empty, or have a smattering of people if you're in a concert hall and experiencing that. So it's always deceiving. That it's an interesting sort of trick of the eye, I think.
This is a bit of a digression, but like in my, because I worked at Mirvish,
Right? Yeah.
at the Ed Mirvish Theatre at Yonge and Dundas in Toronto, the old Pantages for old Torontonians, older Torontonians.
Thank you.
It's there was a period in like 2016 where they shrunk the theater quite considerably with these sort of these fake walls went up on the side, and they brought it down by like 1,000 seats. And Rupert Everett came to do the Judas Kiss. And he was so disappointed with that, because from the stage it just looked like it looked terrible, right? And it looked like everything had shrunk down for him, and there were other reasons why it had happened. But yeah, it can do a number on even just him coming back potentially, or things like that, right? And so twofold.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So a little bit. I know you were relying on like your natural instincts, but what was that learning curve like? And what would you say the point was where you felt like I've got a grip on this? I know what. Yeah,
it's still happening. I'm learning so much, because honestly, the industry, especially in the last 2 years, has changed so dramatically that this isn't something you can sort of I think anyone's lying to you, or they're naive if they say they've mastered it. It's not at all true. So much changes. So I think the learning curve for me at the beginning was very big, because I received a binder with what had been done in the past, and it was a small team. I had some fantastic colleagues that helped me, which was amazing. I very much needed that. Yeah, special shout out to Christina, who was incredible for my first 3 years, probably, especially whenever I certainly wouldn't know who the heck to contact at a certain venue, or even I was still learning at that point what city was in which state, because as a Canadian, my American geography was pretty terrible.
This is my problem right now. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but definitely, lately, you can't sit back on your laurels by any means, because things change so quickly. We find that what's happening in a given market at a given time, if there's a sports team playing, if there's a global pandemic, I mean, there are so many things that can come and throw a wrench in your plans. You have to be nimble and act quickly, and be looking into the future in order to not despair and not waste money, essentially, in marketing, I think.
I want to talk about, obviously, the pandemic, because who doesn't? But I also just want to talk about how things have changed since it started, not just the last 2 years, but like,
great point.
Even social media,
especially social media,
9 years, right?
Yeah.
It's completely different. So like, how do you keep up with that? And I'm going to just throw this out here as a compliment to both you and also Attila and Marion, and that's that I've worked with different companies who are very hesitant to try new things. Your willingness, I think, to allow me and others to go out there and try these things that might seem strange, like TikTok or Reels or whatever, I think will just curate more and more success down the road. It's the key to it. So I throw that out there and say that you guys are so willing to do that. But how did you kind of keep up with the changing landscape over 9 years, watching it all shift and change? Because like, when you had just started, I think you guys were doing like mailers as well, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, we did mailers as recently as 2 years ago.
Yeah,
as well.
It was even a lot bigger. And then social media changes. How do you keep up with it all?
It happens slowly, and you have a lot of conversations with. You notice these changes often happen. The people that are most ahead of the curve are the large organizations. So we noticed that, there aren't brochures being mailed anymore in Chicago. in Miami, our venue is no longer producing that 60-page season brochure. There happens to be no season anymore in XYZ venues. They're actually just promoting single tickets. So all of these things make you look around and realize the landscape is changing. Patrons are less willing and less excited to sign up for a subscription series and put down, $500 at the beginning. More. Oh, that's more than that. At the beginning of a season for concerts they may or may not be able to go to, especially now for obvious reasons, with the uncertainty. So single ticket sales become more important. And then how do you sell single tickets? Doing a newspaper ad 6 months out isn't going to sell your single tickets, because the people will have forgotten about it by then, and they're not planning that far ahead. Right. So what has more immediacy? Social media has more immediacy. So I think, to your point though, Nick, you're what I really respect about Attila and Marion and this company, and really just companies that do well and are nimble and change with the times. I've used that word too many times, but the change with the times is they hire people and trust them with this. So I would never, social media is not my wheelhouse. It's yours. So we hired you and you are amazing at it. And if you're not following us on TikTok, whoever's watching this, please do, because Nick is a powerhouse on there. So I think that all is part and parcel of the success and pivoting to new media as it happens. Also, frankly, as we see as just even consumers of media, when was the last time you picked up a physical newspaper? Probably not as often as our parents do. And so depending on what kind of product you're trying to get out into the market,
for the actual market.
Yeah, well, exactly. And that's regionally specific too, because some newspapers have done an exceptional job at keeping a grip on their on pulse of their city. Others not so much. So all of this factors in, which makes our job really interesting. I will say that's one thing I really like about the fact that we present concerts in multiple cities. A lot of our colleagues, of course, get to know a given city inside out and backwards. Mm-hmm. They know exactly the nuances of everything to do with Calgary, say. Yeah. We have to know enough about 30 different markets in order to be successful. So that's a fun little sort of global tourism, concert tourism thing that we get to do.
It's true. I'm going to read this little quote. I have a follow-up to that, but Atelier J says, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is, I don't know. The quote by John Wanamaker.
What a great quote.
Great quote.
That's depressing.
Yeah, exactly, right? One of the things I've noticed, and we've talked about this a lot, so I just want to kind of throw it at you and just pick your brain with it, but that also the way I found that social media has changed dramatically, I think, within the last couple of years. And I don't know if that's because of the pandemic and everybody being at home and on it, but people are really, really wary about being sold something.
Oh, yeah.
Different. When I was the last high school generation to get through all, like Facebook came at the towards the end of grade 12 for me. Mm-hmm. So basically I got through most of that without it.
Yeah.
But by that time, and we talked about even how Facebook events aren't as big a deal right now as they were back then. Back then, you had a Facebook event for a house party and 150 people were on it, and they commented and posted photos. It was a different landscape. And then even now, I think people scroll past if stuff feels too much like, come see my show, or buy tickets or blah, 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 or buy this product I'm selling you.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that shift? And I know I'm kind of prodding you here, feeding you.
No, prod away.
I know you have noticed it, and I know you have your own philosophies on it. And what are your thoughts, I guess, on that?
It's such a good point, Nick. You're absolutely right. And we can see the really creepy part, and maybe people don't realize this if you're not managing these social media accounts, is we can see exactly how many people are scrolling past things that they don't find engaging. I mean, we can absolutely tell basically what you had for breakfast. It's remarkable, the kind of information that's available. So we have the data to show us that exactly what you're pointing out here. That's not just hearsay. Content that feels salesy. No one wants that. I don't want that. I ignore that. Absolutely. We're so inundated with advertising. So our job is not that. And enter Nick, who's the best storyteller I know.
But that's the thing is, I think that the flip side of that, it can be really dangerous to be like, we're not going to be salesy, but let's be sneaky and salesy.
That's interesting.
And we had a great conversation with Brian Cheney last week, and you and I talked about this after. Is he brought up this thing about the epiphany that he had with acting and performing was authenticity, and I think good marketing is that as well. Is being authentic. And so I said this to you guys when I came on board, and that was that I wanted to make our pages entertaining.
Yeah.
A conversation like this shouldn't just be a half hour of us saying, come see Salute to Vienna.
Right, exactly.
It should be valuable in a number of different ways for people and entertaining in its own right, because why else would you follow an account?
Totally.
You buy a ticket to the show, sure, but like, why are you following the account? Well, because the content is the show and then some, you know what I mean? It should be the whipped cream on top in a way.
I love that. And you're totally right, Nick. And the authenticity that Brian Cheney was talking about, what really struck me about that, and now this will sound salesy now that you've couched this in this way, but I'm about to compliment our concert series to say that there's something so real about the engagement between the artists and their audience. The conductor is telling stories, the singers, there's just something that's so real that when they cross each other on the stage, they'll give each other a pat on the back or a little kiss on the cheek and all these things that are not scripted, that are just people loving what they're doing. And the audiences can feel that in the same way that we're all consumer audiences. So we can feel that in advertising as well if we're being sold something inauthentic. Yeah.
But I think that's also something that's really special about this company is it does feel like everybody believes in the product.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't feel like we're just going through the motions and doing the work and doing a good job because we're getting paid. It's like, I think all of us actually genuinely want, and I can certainly speak for myself in this, I want to see the show do well, I believe. And I think audiences as well can tell when you genuinely are proud to share something with them.
I think so. There's a lot of pride.
That kind of harkens back to this whole like when we were marketing our own shows, is you as an actor are like, no, come see me do this, or a singer. I'm proud of this and I want to share it with you.
Yeah, that is exactly it. And there's a lot to be proud of. Not only is there the tradition behind the concert series, but there's also just each individual performer spends all of this time and energy working on producing this product that they're ecstatic. I want to tell you something that proves the point. Sure. Up until now, I have been the person that does our TV interviews for Salute to Vienna. Now the wonderful Nick is going to be waking up at 5 a.m. to go and do the morning shows.
I think earlier for one of them, but yeah. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. But my point is that there's the joy in doing those. For maybe 3 years running, I've brought the dancers with me to a couple of the morning shows that we do right before the performances. And they are so excited. It's like a reset for me every year to realize no matter how busy we get, no matter how it's easy to lose sight of what we're doing because we're looking at ticket count reports. We're trying to find as many people who will love these shows to come. That's in the job description. But then these dancers will talk excitedly in the car, in the back seat as I'm driving them to wherever, Hamilton for one of these performances, about how excited they are to be here in North America. I mean, for a lot of our dancers, it's their first time overseas. They're coming from Europe and they're young and they're so excited. And then, they warm up and they're getting ready. They put their makeup on. You just get to sort of have this insight. That's what I really love about what you're doing, Nick, on social media, is you're sort of providing that backstage access to people who want to see that, who aren't like me waking up in the morning and going to a morning show with these people. You're actually just bringing that to wider audiences. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly it, and I think that's more and more of what people kind of want to see. Are you okay for a few more minutes here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I know we're at our half hour, but I don't want to leave us on a dapper note, but I do want to talk a little bit about COVID, and then also just talk about this year and what energy you're kind of feeling going into this year with us coming back with 17 different markets. But okay, so 2020 you get through Salute to Vienna, because that's January, and then all the rest of the concerts kind of shut down, as they do across the world. 2021's the real, I think, devastating year for you folks, because Nir says, thanks for sharing your excitement. Yes.
Oh, thanks, Nir.
That's the real devastating year, because that's when we all, I think, unanimously thought, okay, we can get back to this. Broadway was trying to open up. Toronto theaters were opening up everywhere. And you were moving forward with a bunch of shows, and then the Omicron wave hits. Can you just talk a little bit about what that was like? Because that would have been unprecedented to deal with.
Sure. Oh, it was. Yeah. It was. Can I tell the story about our Harry Potter performance?
Oh, yes. That's in 2020, right?
Yeah. That was exactly. That was in 2020, and I think it was April. Yeah. So this virus was definitely taking hold, but so far it was not canceling performances. We had a Harry Potter performance in Calgary with the wonderful Evan Mitchell, who is such a superstar in so many ways. He was our conductor. Anyway, we flew him out to Calgary. Things were getting serious, but we still had 3 nearly sold out performances ready to go for Harry Potter in Calgary. And the third movie. So Evan dutifully rehearses the orchestra. They have a break, they rehearse again. And then we get word that the government of Alberta is going to be making an announcement at, what was it? Let me get the time change right. It was 4:00 their time, which is what time our time? No, I'm sorry. It was 5:00 their time. So 3:00 our time. Is that right? I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's irrelevant. So, but scary. So here we are, opening night, government of Alberta going to be making an announcement. And of course, there's wild speculation of what that means. I cut to the chase. I mean, everyone knows where this is going. So the performances were cut. I think the capacity restriction was then 100 people. Well, we had, more than 2,000 set to come. So that's a non-starter. 100 people, we had more than 100 people on stage. So that's just a cancellation. So in the 11th hour, with people already traveling from all over to get to the performance, we had to get the message out. I mean, it's crisis management at that point. It was devastating. So that was difficult for so many reasons. And the wonderful Calgary Philharmonic was they were superstars in helping us manage all of that. And so was Evan, and everyone was cheerful, and as cheerful as one can be, right? So it was remarkable. And that was sort of the moment that I think we all realized as arts marketers, we can't take this for granted anymore. I think we always used to think that performances were always going to happen. We were always...
The show must go on, right?
The show must go on, Nick.
Yeah.
That's
and for
it.
the first time, it's like it didn't.
Wow.
I can't describe it to people who aren't in the performing arts, what it was like to see an entire industry disappear overnight, really.
Yeah.
Like it was over the course of a weekend that it kind of all landed, and how much that has rattled me to the point where it's like, that's how long it's even taken me to come back to the performing arts.
Yeah.
Just now with this.
Yeah, well, it's true.
And even then, you and I are still kind of like, I know we've talked about it, where we're like, are we good?
Are we? Yeah. And is it too good to be true? Is it going to stay? Are we good? Is this, almost you're looking around waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it's a really, everyone has missed it tremendously. That's the thing that I'm really glad about. I think we've had just an outpouring from people saying that they miss seeing Mrs. Brown, who used to sit next to them every year at Salute to Vienna in Chicago, you know, wondering whether Mrs. Brown is okay.
Like
And
visitors at church.
yeah, absolutely. Like there are relationships that are built.
Yeah.
And it was funny, I was just listening to a podcast the other day about weak ties, about how happiness is so much is generated so much by the weak ties that we have, the crossing guard that we talk to, the barista that we talk to. And I think the people that we interact with at a performance, that's every bit as meaningful as sometimes the performance itself, the act of getting dressed up and going to a place, going out for dinner beforehand, you know, meeting the ushers, greeting the ushers, sitting down, getting comfortable, reading it, all the ritual of a performance, right? And that I think is that can't be replaced in any other way.
It's so true that you say that. Just for a little anecdote, because I used to do this Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis show, and at the show, we would hop off the stage on the curtain call and run out and basically beat the audience to the lobby. And then we would meet the audience. When they'd come out, we'd be there panting, and we'd be like, "Hey, folks, how was the show inside?" And we'd shake hands with all of them. And the funny thing is, we had done that show for 3 years. That was my favorite part of the show.
I am not even a little bit surprised, both knowing you and
but it's like that was my favorite part. It was talking to them, and it gave me such a euphoric rush.
Wow.
It put me on such a high afterwards. Just I would still do bits, and we'd be improvising with them, and we'd be, you know, taking pictures and laughing and making them laugh. But like that was it was almost everything outside of that, but being with them, with the crowd that we just shared 2.5 or 2 hours with, right?
It's the connection. It's the connection to the humanity, and you know, seeing the whites of the eyes, as Marion often will say. Marion Glatz, our co-founder, she will say that, and I think there's so much truth to that. It's about the connection between people. That's what our job is. It's just bringing people together. I feel that I hear the violins in the distance coming in, swooning with that. But I truly feel it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Crazy Blonde says, please do shows in Tucson. We would love to. We love Tucson. I love Tucson. I've performed in Tucson twice. Love going there.
Amazing. Well, you know what? That's a good opportunity to talk about our shows, because we have 17, as you said, but go ahead.
Before we go to the 17, what I actually wanted to do with you is put you on the spot that you put me on in my interview, which is if you were to tell people about Salute to Vienna.
The elevator pitch.
Why don't you, you know, the people who don't know what the show is, don't, or get the concept of it, but not really, how would you describe it to them? And then, talk about kind of what we're doing this year.
I have an unfair advantage to this, because I have, over the last 9 years, written most of our, you know, one-liners about this show. So I could tell you that this is a beautiful tradition, a celebration of the new year, with singing, dancing, and full orchestra, beautiful costumes to welcome the new year, to put the past behind us and ring in a new beginning. That's what I would say that goes on our posters. If you ask me the thing that makes me want to go back to this show year after year, I think it's the variety. I grew up with classical music. I studied classical music, and very accustomed to sitting in one place dutifully for, 24 minutes for a movement, and then not clapping, because, we shun the people that clap between movements. So then sitting for the remainder until I'm able to clap and move. And certainly I don't shift my body or open a candy. Heavens to Betsy there, right? This is not that kind of show. And I really love that. So I love sitting for 3.5 minutes at a time, basically is the longest that any of these pieces are. And someone will, a soprano will come on stage and will sing, and then the conductor will say something hilarious and have everyone in stitches. And then you hear sort of the expanse of the hall, right? You hear people laughing 2 balconies above you, and you realize, wow, this is this collective experience, and everyone's enjoying themselves. you relax a little bit more in your chair, and then some dancers come onto the stage. And so that sort of variety, I think, is what I really love about the show.
Sold.
Was that an okay answer? Would you hire me?
Great. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So this year, I interrupted you with that, but we're in 17 cities. Obviously, there's an element of rebuilding for everybody in the performing arts. There's this huge weight of carrying the that devastation of the last 2 years and overcoming it. But what's your feeling? We are, I don't mean to scare you, but we're almost at the end of November. Next week, November 21st. So where's your energy? Where's your, is it excitement? Is it nerves? A bit of both? Like, what are you feeling?
What am I feeling? I'm gonna take a glass of a sip of wine for that one.
Yeah.
I am feeling excellent, Nick. I'm feeling fantastic about the season ahead because we have awesome artists who are all excited to come. We're going to be interviewing some more of them, I know. We have great programs that are all already set and ready to go, and it looks great. Every one of these 17 performances is going to be a smash hit. Yeah. So now you and I just need to do our job and make sure enough people know about these concerts so that we have full houses. And so I'm feeling good. How are you feeling, Nick?
I'm feeling kind of the exact same way. Obviously, there's I won't lie and say I'm not overwhelmed. I've not been this busy
ever
since the pandemic started. So even just that is like, holy moly. I think I'm feeling like confident with what we're doing. It's that same thing of I feel really welcomed by all of you guys and passionate about the work. And you just hit on something else that I just want to say before we go. And that's that I always found this when I was marketing that Dean and Jerry show is the same reason. I knew that a full house was more fun for everybody. Yeah. I know that sounds like a sales line. I know that sounds cheesy, but I would always be bummed because I'd be like, if a house was half sold, I'd be like, like they would have just, they'd especially with a comedy show like that was mimicking like a 1940s nightclub act, right?
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Like a Copacabana act. It was like, it needed to be a packed, boozy for that show. And this is the same way in that sense that like a full orchestra or a full audience is going to give you that sense of the giggles coming from different spots, the murmur of applause, the joy, the people sitting around you, and that sense of community. And that's part of why I always pushed for full houses. I don't know. Yeah. So
there are some things you don't know yet about this show that I'm going to tell you that's even going to cement that point, Nick, because you haven't seen one of these yet. So you're in for such a treat. Yeah.
Toronto, and I'm excited.
Exactly. This will be your first one. So I completely agree. It's true of all concerts, but I feel like it's particularly true of this one. You know, is these concerts around the new year, everyone is in such a festive spirit, and that is infectious. And that's what I mean about the dialogue of this show, the energy of seeing the full house when these artists come onto the stage. Now, what's really, really cool is the venues that have choir lofts behind the stage are full. And some people will write to us before we're even on sale and try to get those seats because they love watching the dancers from this other perspective, like seeing them from behind and then watching when they do their spins. And they get the cool view of being able to watch the conductor's face, right? From in the choir loft behind the orchestra. Yeah. So if you're sitting out in the audience watching, you're not only watching the performance itself, you're also watching people watch the performance because you're seeing those people in the choir loft. So right there's this incredible synergy, this dialogue of experience. I think the thing that you don't know happens yet, one of the encores is Auld Lang Syne, and that happens every year. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know, but because I've been doing the programs.
Oh yeah, of course. I guess you knew that. So I thought I could tell you something new.
But no, I'm excited, and I thought, that's amazing that happens. So yeah,
what happens is everybody joins hands. So you're joining hands with strangers on either side, and crossing your arms, and everyone's standing and sings Auld Lang Syne together. It's this incredible tradition, and suddenly you have this entire concert hall singing together, led by the orchestra and the singers and the dancers on stage. And it's just such a beautiful thing. It's a kind of ritual that I think starts the year off in such a beautiful way. I'm getting misty-eyed thinking about it. Thanks, Nick. I'm really looking forward to this.
No, that's it. It's those magical moments, right?
Yeah.
That live theater's all about. Andrea, thank you so much. I know we went over time, and I'm so sorry, but this is you and I. We could talk for...
We could talk forever. In fact, we do often.
Yeah,
yes.
we do, yeah. Folks, thank you so much for sticking around and watching this. I do have a bunch of interviews coming up. On Thursday, I've got Alexandra Reinprecht, who's one of our sopranos. I've got Alistair Willis on the 22nd, which is next Tuesday, which is scary to say. He's one of our conductors, and then a whole bunch more in December coming. Crazy Blonde says, we went every year in LA. We are back in LA this year, Crazy Blonde. We're so excited. We're in, we'll be in Costa Mesa, which is near, and then at the Walt Disney Center in LA. Do you know the dates off the top of your head of both of those?
I do, yes. Yeah. January 1 in Costa Mesa, Segerstrom Center for the Arts, and then January 2 in Walt Disney Concert Hall.
Perfect. See, this is why I need you all time still.
I'll be in your ear anytime.
I barely know where these things are. Folks, stick around. We've got a lot more content coming between now and New Year's. It's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, you can find everything else that you need to know at salutetovienna.com. And yeah, we'll put Tucson on our radar there, Crazy Blonde. Thank you so much. Andrea, thank you for this great interview.
Thanks, Nick. Have a great night. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.